AM 630.
6:37 on WMAL. Coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, two former governors will join us. At 7:05, we'll be joined by Jim Gilmore. And at 7:35, we'll be joined by Doug Wilder as we do the postmortem on yesterday's election. We have a new governor-elect. By the way, we don't have an attorney general as yet, and it may go to recount. And then coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll talk more about the Virginia election and give you a chance to weigh in. It's Brian Wilson alongside Larry O'Connor.
And this weekend coming up is Veterans Day. It's Veterans Day weekend, and joining us right now, one of our favorite veterans, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. May I take this opportunity, Colonel North, to first say thank you for your service.
You are kind to say so, Larry. It's great to be with you, even though the election didn't turn out quite the way I would have liked.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. First, I want to let everybody know that your brand new book, American Heroes on the Homefront, it is now going to be available, and you can get information on it at olivernorth.com, including some information about some autographed copies and some book signings that you're going to be doing in the area. Colonel North, though, listen, you know a little something about Virginia. Talk to me about what everyone's going to reinterpret this election yesterday, but to me it looked like a reflection of the Clinton victories, which was McAuliffe couldn't garner a majority of the votes. There was a third-party candidate sort of mucking up the works. Was this really a referendum against conservatism, like many pundits want to say?
No, I think it was a referendum on if you raise enough money, you can beat almost anybody. If I knew so much about Virginia politics, you and I'd be having this conversation in my U.S. Senate office.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I also know what it's like to take on...
Ollie?
Well, I also know what it's like to take on one very big money and a three-person race, and I think that's exactly what we saw here. I don't think there's any great new shift in Virginia politics. I am concerned that we are increasingly blue. As a Republican, I care about that, but I don't see this as a quote bellwether, as I heard last night on the. I guess the Washington Compost reporter was talking about it and said something, this is a bellwether of the way that things are going to go from 2014 onward to the presidential election. I don't see that at all.
All right. So if you were running that campaign, what would you have done differently?
In fact, I said this to Ken Cuccinelli's campaign. Every time somebody, look, a lot of our colleagues love to ask off-the-wall questions. And a lot of them have to do with what we commonly refer to as social issues. I refer to them as moral and spiritual issues. But nonetheless, every time a reporter asks one of those weird questions, what Ken Cuccinelli should have done is said, I am the Attorney General who carried Obamacare, opposed Obamacare, all the way to the Supreme Court, that I knew what was going to happen. And I think if that had been a consistent theme of that campaign, it's easy to play shoulda, woulda, coulda, or what if, in the day after an election, but I think if that had been a consistent theme of the campaign, it would have been a rout for the Democrats, despite the money. The numbers are right. McAuliffe, who had been Clinton's bagman after all, outraised him 4-1.
You say it would have been a rout against the Democrats?
Yeah. I think so, Brian. I think what you're looking at is one massive amounts of money, and Terry McAuliffe was, let's call it as it is. He was Bill Clinton's bagman. And he's got the entire Democratic Party list.
Our guest is Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, and I want to talk to you about your book, American Heroes. You know, to me, I never served, and I think anyone who does commit themselves, especially now that it's an all-volunteer service, anyone who commits themselves to defending our nation and put themselves on the line, or putting themselves at risk of being on the line, they're heroes in their own way. I mean, do you interpret American Heroes that loosely, as loose as I interpret it?
No, it's not loose at all, Larry. Look, the classical definition of of a hero, American or otherwise, a hero is a person who puts him or herself at risk for the benefit of others. And that is certainly what all of these young Americans have done, not just those who are in flak jackets and flight suits and combat boots, but that includes their families. And I missed that for years. I mean, I missed it when I was serving as a Marine. I missed it right up until we did a special that the Marines let us do by putting a camera team down at Camp Lejeune while I deployed overseas with their mates in a Marine infantry battalion. And I saw that, and it came through clearly in the documentary. And so when I got back home, Betsy says to me, you never really understood what was going on back home here, did you, what we were going through? And I have to admit I hadn't. And so this is a follow-on to that. This lets all of that story out. Look, There are photographs in this book. Nothing in any of what we've shot on television or in this book is staged. There are some very graphic photographs that we would never broadcast on Fox News. But when your helmet cam catches an IED going off right directly in front of you, it's unavoidable. We don't put that on air.
Yeah.
Those photographs are in this book. And some of them are very, very graphic. But what you see in this book is what these remarkable Americans were like before the war, during the terrible incident, immediately thereafter, and then following them on, and now in some cases for as much as 4 years. And what those families have endured and the love and affection that has come as a consequence of the injury and helping the healing. It's a very powerful story. There's one other element of this whole thing, and you mentioned the word, Larry, and that is the word volunteer. The husbands and wives volunteered together. The children may not have volunteered. They may come as a consequence. This is the first war since the American Revolution in which every single person serving in combat, serving in time of war in uniform, is a volunteer. It's not happened since the American Revolution. So there's a tie for all of this all the way back to the founding of the Republic. And these young Americans get it. They are extraordinary in terms of their commitment. First of all, the best educated military force the entire world's ever seen. Average education for a young enlisted person is about 13 and a half years. And you look in the eyes of these guys before, during, as they get treated, and then afterwards, and you see the spirit of what made this country great.
Well, listen, good luck with the book, and it's a wonderful idea, and I'm so supportive of that effort. Let me ask you another question. You know, you were the counterterrorism guy back during the Reagan administration, and recently when you talk about counterterrorism, it seems the strategy has moved toward the use of drones. And according to a new book that's out there, the president has apparently bragged to people that he's become very good at killing people.
Yeah.
What do you think about that statement that is attributed to the President of the United States?
Brian, I cannot think of a good thing to say about the foreign policy or the national security policy of this administration. And I'm deeply concerned that what we're now seeing is the end result of that play out in places like Syria or Egypt, the Middle East, where we still need friends. We may not need all the oil we were once getting from that part of the world, but, Lord, we need friends in that part of the world. So if you're an American ally or you're an American adversary, you've been affected by this foreign policy. And that foreign policy is one of our enemies no longer respect or certainly don't fear us. That's why you see the Chinese doing what they're doing and Putin doing what he's doing.
But specifically to hear the president,
specifically
hear the president say, "I've gotten very good at killing people."
No, I find that to be frightening from my perspective. Look at there was a national debate about a year and a half ago over whether it was legal for presidents to kill American citizens who might be on some wanted list somewhere. You know, I still have very serious reservations about that, and I'm no liberal. No. The book Heroes Prove, the last novel, when you and I talked about it, was all about that kind of thing being done by a president sometime in the future. I had no idea it was going to come true.
All right, Ollie, we got to roll, but it's so great to have you as always, and I want to remind everyone, OliverNorth.com is where you go to get the information about getting an autographed copy of the new book, American Heroes on the Homefront, or also to find out about a book signing. Thanks for joining us, Colonel North.
Look forward to being with you again.